Yeah, you can see why he was probably not happy. It's a big day. He's well aware of what this game means to every single Spurs fan, and it's 3 times now that Arsenal have come here to this stadium and walked away with the victory. We'll come to Spurs, but first of all, Paul, we had to dash off to get to our second live game, but just spell out the significance of this result here for Arsenal this afternoon.
Oh, huge result. Missing 2 of their big players. They're big players. And to come to Tottenham, their arch enemies, and win this game and comfortably, really. I know, like, I heard Song say they dominated the game. They probably did, but never looked like scoring, really. They had a couple of half chances. That's not enough. The crossing wasn't good enough. Phenomenal result. The resilience, the players that come in. It's hard to come into a team. Jorginho hasn't played for a long time. You know, and he comes in and they all do their jobs. It's hard to do that, to come into a base. Because if one of them players gets lazy, Tottenham go through you like a knife through butter. And they don't. They all... Havertz and Trossard come back to a line, didn't they? They had an imaginary line across the pitch and they never went further back. They just stayed there. And their setup was amazing. And then they counter-attacked and they work on set plays. And 1-0 to the Arsenal.
Again. Do you think it changes the approach for the game against City last week? Does it take the pressure off in a lot of ways as well, that trip to the Etihad? Yeah,
I think so. Now they can go there, be full of confidence. You know, everybody who's been watching today, the whole of the Premier League, they're missing Odegaard, they're missing Rice. They're 2 big players.
Well, you were really nervous.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I was 100%. I wasn't as bullish this time round. But for me now, this is a heads or tails. For me, this league's a heads or tails this year. You know, I always thought, who's going to beat Man City over 38 games? I see enough today that Arsenal will be there. Arsenal have every chance of winning this Premier League.
Does Jorginho play again next week?
I play Jorginho next week, personally. I think Jorginho breaks you. You know, when Man City go after you, he plays that quick pass. He's got great vision. He gets on the half turn and he passes that ball. And that's what you need to do. You've got to get past the press, because if you don't, it's a long day at Man City. They go after you. They all know where they're going. And for me, Jorginho was outstanding at the Emirates against Man City. Can he do it at the Etihad? Who knows?
Mikel Arteta as well. Just sorry, David. It's just when those fixtures come up, and he saw Tottenham away, Champions League fixture away, and
Jamie, it's Villa away.
Villa away, but especially this week.
Yeah,
this week. This is because it's a North London derby, and after obviously having the results. It was imperative they got that win today. I felt they were so strong defensively. Saliba and Gabriel, just the little details that made the difference.
Jamie, let me show you this
pieces.
graphic that spells out just how incredible this defensive performance is from this team, particularly away from home in this calendar year. This is extraordinary. They've won 10 of these 11 games, yes, scoring 31, conceding only 3 goals in those 11 games, 9 clean sheets.
And that's why, and Paul's mentioned it, and that's what I felt at the start of the season. And it's going to be difficult because of Manchester City and the start they've had, and the big problem for everybody is Haaland at the moment. But when if you go through the history of winning Premier Leagues, Paul's done it with the title, having a great defence. That's a great starting point. If you can defend well, you can score from set pieces, you don't look like anyone's ever really going to cause you too many problems. That is a massive key, Les, isn't it?
Do you think they could go there and play like that against Man City next week?
Was there not an element of them doing that last season?
Yeah, I think I think that graphic shows you. That graphic tells you one thing and one thing only. That's how good Man City are. That's what it tells you. Because if you're not winning the league and you've got an away record like that...
They also scored 91 goals last season, Arsenal, and still didn't manage to...
And that just tells you how good Man City are. We never give credit. Man City are that good. It's scary. It is scary because putting up them figures is unreal.
And that's why unreal. And that's why I asked the question, because I thought today Tottenham had a lot of possession, but didn't show a lot of quality on the ball. And when they
do you think if they do let Man City have that much possession, they will hurt them?
Yeah, I think if you do, then I think Man City have got the quality players to hurt you. I don't think Tottenham had the quality players to hurt them today. They had them, but they just didn't produce today.
Yeah, there was an argument, Paul, last year going to City and getting a point, which was to some was a really good point, was the difference. If they go there and win, what a statement that is. And it's a lot easier said than done.
I think last year, Jamie, people were asking, could Arsenal have been a little bit more
aggressive? Yeah, exactly.
In the second half.
So maybe that's something you learn from. But right now, what's happened with this result today has meant and given you the luxury of thinking, if we get a point there next week, that's a fantastic start to the season for us.
Well, hello everybody, it's the Gary Neville podcast from Tottenham, who have just been beaten in their big derby by Arsenal. Gabriel, big header in the second half was the only goal. What have you made of it, Gary?
Really impressed with Arsenal. A really good day for them. I think that just the word I think of when I watch a performance like that is trust. You know, obviously over the years you're trying to build a trust as a team in terms of sort of within your own group, but also everyone watching and thinking, are they getting closer, are they getting nearer? And performances like that I think build trust in the fact that where Arsenal currently are, why they've given Mikel Arteta a 3-year deal. I think they're on the right track, and you couldn't disagree with that. But they've got no Ødegaard, they've got no Declan Rice, two of their very, very best players. But the one thing they had going into that game is a very, very good back four, but not just that, a very good defensive shape and unit. And they never broke that. And that was a team performance of know-how, of wily, you know, not naive, you know, not immature. It was the opposite of it. It was experienced, it was mature, it was really something that you think a team that's won multiple titles would play like. And Mikel Arteta obviously hasn't won a title yet at Arsenal, but it was a really good performance. I mean, last year at City away when they drew 0-0, it had everything in terms of defensive compactness apart from the counter-attacking goal. And I think at the time a few of us were quite, not critical, but observed that, go on, when you go and win a title, you go and win that game. That was a very good preparation game for next Sunday, because they've got to go and do the same again. But I just thought the defensive compactness, as Saka went off towards the end, I don't think there's a better wide player in defensive terms in the league. Got to hand it to Martinelli and to Trossard as well when they play now in that wide left area. They get back in. I always think if your wide player is on the opposite side defensively, is compact and tight to your central midfield player, connected to your fullback, obviously on the side of the ball as well, they're doubling up. Some of the doubling up that they did on the side of the ball with Ben White and with Timber was outstanding. And I'm not going to go in hard on Tottenham and Spurs, because I genuinely think it was bloody hard work for them to break down the Arsenal team today. Even when you get a crossing, you've got the two giants of Saliba and Gabriel in the middle who are fighting and harassing and tight. You know, Solanke had that header in the first half, didn't he? But Gabriel's touched tight with him. There's no free headers in their box. And I thought it was a really good day. Focus, concentration, discipline, everybody doing their jobs. You know, we've been so critical of Arsenal over the last 10, 12 years when they've been loose and they've been naive and they've given goals away. This is the opposite now, what we're watching. It's a very, very good team, a team that I think everybody can look at and think there's a lot I can take away from it.
It's sometimes boring, frankly, it's often boring talking about the players who aren't there, the ones who are injured, but it was a big part of the narrative of this game that Rice and Ødegaard weren't there. And I read a lot and heard a lot, perhaps from you included, around the fact that this was Arsenal's chance to prove how big they can be. They can be a real champion club because you don't notice the difference. And it sort of feels as though, doesn't it, that they've achieved that? Yeah,
I drove here this morning with a mindset, and I went and did the NBC interview before the game. I'm not having excuses after this match about Rice and Ødegaard. I am not listening to anything about Rice and Ødegaard. I'm not. Arsenal were almost ever present last season. They hardly changed their team. And the idea that you're going to win a league and you start whinging about players not being playing and you start pointing towards them not being playing for a reason, that dropping points, that's a really good result for Arsenal today in more ways than one. One, the pressure that City put on you and the fact that they're now 2 points behind them and going into next week. The fact it's a North London derby. But the fact that they've answered a question that everybody would have been looking at. You've not got your captain, you've not got your outstanding central midfield player in Declan Rice. You've lost a lot of energy and legs, and you've come here and done the job and won. So yeah, I think that's what I said about trust. You know, it's not a trust in respect of the first 11, it's a trust in what they're doing, their squad, their manager. You know, you can tell that they've been set up today to come here, and I said at the end of the game, it's almost like it was designed that way. And I don't know why I didn't say it when that ball went out for a corner on that far side, and the Arsenal fans in that far corner were almost not, they weren't jumping up, but they were almost celebratory, weren't they, before that corner was played in. And I got a feeling a little bit of, they're going to score here. This is the moment that you go and score if you're going to win a league. This is the moment that you're going to go and score if you're going to win a big match. You soak up the pressure, you withstand it, you give nothing away, and then you go and punch and knock them out. And that's what they did, Arsenal. They're very good on set pieces. They're well drilled. I joke about the set piece coach on the touchline, but he's doing a great job. And I think Mikel Arteta knew how his team were going to win today, and it was going to be this way, and he's gone and done it. And you've got to give great respect to that. It's not the way in which Arsenal always play, But I love that performance equally as the performances where they play breathtaking football with combinations, because I like the idea of teams being adaptable and being able to play without the ball and control a game without the ball. They're not like Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. They always seem to have the ball. They can sit deep. They're in 4-4-2. The two front players now are doing a great job in that unit. I love 4-4-2. I love the idea of defending in a 4-4-2. It's how we used to defend. It's how Arsenal historically would have defended. And I refer to Bold and Adams and that famous Arsenal back five. Now, obviously, this back five are not at that level yet because they haven't won a league. But they're starting to show signs of a cross between a George Graham 11 and an Arsene Wenger 11. It's almost got the mix of both. And I like this Arsenal team. Really good team, really good performance levels. Not got anything negative to say about them at all today. You could say here and say, oh, they were sloppy in possession, they gave the ball away. No. When you're really concentrated and you're focused and you're thinking we're not going to lose a goal, that is something to really be well respected. It was a fantastic day for them in that sense.
I'll throw one at you that perhaps you wouldn't anticipate, but of course we mustn't forget they've got a Champions League game on Thursday. Arsenal before the Man City game, they go to Atalanta. Big game, he's going to have to manage his resources. But that aside, Rice comes back in. He's clearly going to play Rice next week.
Yeah.
So how is that going to work? Who doesn't play? It's a tough one, isn't it?
It is.
There's Sterling there as well, by the way.
Yeah, I think he'll come back in just for Jorginho and leave it as it is. I think Trossard did well in that role, number 10. I don't think he'll change that. I think he'll keep it simple. I don't think Mikel Arteta is doing anything nowadays that's surprising us. And I say that in a positive sense, in a complimentary sense. He's got such confidence in his own team and how they play. He doesn't need to try and think of sort of fancy different systems or really sort of like shocking anybody with a team selection that goes, he's got stability. When you've got stability, you've got an 11 that works together well and you can change one or two and then one man can come in for another man. There's no need for them to do anything clever or him to think anything clever this week. And I think it's also a week whereby you can trust the 13 players that he's got that are his best players. Now, he might play Jesus on Thursday night. He may bring Raheem Sterling in. But I don't think he's going to be sort of doing mass rotations. They can't afford to do that, and I don't think they should do that. They've got to trust the fact that these players are capable physically of handling the sort of, if you like, it's Thursday, isn't it? So the Sunday, Thursday, Sunday. Great teams for many, many years, whether it's the Barcelona team of Pep Guardiola, whether it's the team that played and dominated Europe back then, or whether it's the City team that over this last few years that have won leagues, or the team that I played in. You play. 7 or 8, 9 of your players play Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday. That's what you do. You're built that way. You recover now. They're straight onto it in the dressing room. The food, the ice baths, the contrast tomorrow, the way in which they go and make sure that everything's perfect, and they're more than capable of doing it. So I'm not worried about that from that respect. I just think obviously next Sunday's big. Psychologically it's big. It's early in the season. I think Paul Merson before the game said I think it's all or nothing if they lose today. I was like, what the hell, can it be all or nothing?
Well, actually, he said 4 points from the 2 games, didn't he?
Yeah.
And so if they drew at Man City next week, that would be it.
Yeah, last season I felt as though they had to go to City and win. I did feel that quite strongly at the time, and I said it. Now, that's not always possible because very few teams win there. I don't feel as strongly about that next weekend because it's so early in the season. But when they were on the way in, on the run-in, and they'll have this game, I don't know when it is, in sort of it's February, March, April time, that when that game comes around again, they'll probably have to win that one. But this one next week, I think, is definitely a must-not-lose. But it's the way in which they go about it. And look, they could go and win next weekend at City. They're set up now with the way in which they defend to be able to go and do that. And, yeah, look, it's a big week. But I don't feel it's something that should be overplayed. I mean, I'm looking forward to next Sunday's game, obviously. But I don't think there's an element of me thinking this early in the season that Arsenal have to go and win. But today was important.
Now, you said you weren't going to go in hard on Tottenham. Everyone would understand why. There wasn't a great deal in the game, truthfully. They've got a ticklish League Cup tie at Coventry, who are pretty strongish championship time, as Manchester United found out last season. Yeah. What would you say to their supporters off the back of this?
I mean, they'll be really disappointed. I just think when you don't score in a game like this, almost like it feels like you've come, and a game of football is about entertainment and excitement, and they've been beaten 1-0. I hope they're quite calm and measured, but obviously understandably upset about losing the game. I think that Tottenham played well in the game between the boxes. I think the football was good. Could you be more demanding of them to try and think about how they could have got a goal against Arsenal? I could, but I genuinely want to give Arsenal credit for what they are and what they do. That's as good as you'll see in defensive shape. Honestly, really tough to break down. There were teams that I played against. You know, you think of maybe sometimes the Gerard Houllier, Rafa Benitez, Liverpool teams that were very narrow. They had that big back four, and that's what Arsenal are now. And they had that tight midfield, and then the two up front dropping in. The Mourinho Chelsea team was so difficult to score a goal against. Scoring a goal against them was a monumental ask. And it's becoming, I know Arsenal do concede goals, but it's becoming really tough to get a chance, let alone a goal. So focus will come on Solanke in the first half, a £60 million striker. And that's definitely one where his first touch has to be better. Out of his feet, bang. Really decisive. Not quite happening for him at the moment in front of the goal and what's happening for him in terms of goals. But there were parts of his game today that were really good. So I don't want to go in too hard on Spurs because of the way in which Arsenal defend. I would have liked to have seen them at times, but that's just maybe my nature of how I see football versus how Ange Postecoglou sees football, or the Tottenham players, or maybe even other clubs. I would like to see the ball being recycled to be able to work a position to deliver into the box, so that you get bodies in the box and then something happens. They did put some crosses into the box, and I think at times they caused a couple of problems for Arsenal's defence, and Arsenal defended a lot of the crosses well too. There were times where I felt as though they recycle it, and then they're trying to push through these sort of really narrow spaces and these really narrow sort of pathways that Arsenal leave you in the middle of the pitch because they're so compact and tight. And I get the fact that you almost want to keep probing there to open space up wide, but I'd feel more comfortable with Maddison. He did it once in the second half later on where De Bruyne does it for City really well, where he just widens his position a little bit and starts to put crosses in from that side, which might then mean that Arsenal's midfield have to adjust, or some of their wide players have to get drawn out. And I'd like to see that a little bit more, where you don't quite see the sort of narrowness of the game of Tottenham, and you see the sort of play being put wider and work maybe sort of 2v1s and try and get to the byline more and probe in this wide area rather than probing through the middle. That's how I would like to see it a little bit more. But I've not watched the game back, and sometimes you watch a game, it isn't how you imagine it, but my gut feeling in the game was that the wide areas were what could have been exploited. I thought Ben White might have just felt a little bit, 2 weeks without playing. Sometimes I remember being in that position. You can sometimes feel a little bit undercooked, and you just step off it a little bit, and you have that little international break where you go, so maybe the song could have been fed a little bit more to go at him, and he wasn't. So for me, that's the one thing that I would say, but I'm not going to be too critical of Spurs because I think generally they played a good game. One thing they do have to answer is the fact that they have a poor set-piece record. Romero, it's poor defending. He's poor defending. He's got to stay tight to Gabriel. I will go hard on the goalkeeper in the sense of I played with dominant goalkeepers and I played with not so dominant goalkeepers. It's an absolute breath of fresh air and a must for me to have a goalkeeper that's brave. Now, I thought he actually started deeper on the line, and actually when I watched the replay in commentary on the rerun of it, he was a yard or so off his line, but he was getting involved in the get him out the way and come. That ball lands 3 or 4 yards in your zone. I'm not having this idea that keepers get blocked. The great goalkeepers, the best goalkeepers, if they get blocked, it's a foul. If they get blocked coming out, they normally get a whistle will go. He has to come out there for me and punch that. He has to help Romero. And that's an expectation of me as a defender, that my goalkeeper has to come out and catch it or punch it if it's 3-4 yards out in the centre of the goal. I don't care how it's being played in. Your starting position should be 1 or 2 yards out. You should just be able to step, jump and catch or punch. And the idea that he gets involved all the time, he's always sort of like, he's pontificating, Vicario. He's always whinging before the ball comes in. His arms are everywhere. He's a bit frantic. I don't want to see that.
Do you think, forgive me for interrupting, but it's only just occurred to me, there was one in the first half, wasn't there?
Yeah.
When he did come to punch. And didn't get that. Do you think that plays into his mindset in the second half? Yeah. He thinks maybe I'm better staying put.
It does, but the best goalkeepers will come the odd time and flap and miss, but that doesn't stop them doing the right thing the next time. You're right, there was the one he flapped at, and then the one after that, Raheem Sterling played short, and he lost his composure for about 30 seconds, Vicario, because he was like this. No. sometimes if I got emotional in a game, which I did, and I remember Sir Alex saying to me, the boss at the end of the game, Gary, I don't want emotional defenders. He's right. You see those Arsenal players. I mean, Saliba got a little bit emotional for a few minutes when in the early parts of the game with Solanke, and he lost his composure. It happens to all of us, but you don't want an emotional goalkeeper, in my opinion. You don't. You want calmness. It's a rock. It's your last line of defence. For me, I don't want them shouting and putting their arms everywhere and being frantic and being anxious, because I think it creates anxiety in the crowd. I think it creates anxiety in the defenders. And I just wanted him to be more dominant. And I wanted him to be more dominant. And they were always going to score from a set piece if they were going to score, because I don't think they created that much, Arsenal. And I'm going on a little bit now, but I feel passionately about this. You've got to come and catch that ball or punch it. That is your ball. As much as Romero should do a better job defensively, that's the keeper's ball, in my opinion.
Okay, just finally, let's set up next weekend. City won from behind yesterday against Brentford in a game which was lowest profile.
Yeah.
Next weekend's won't be. How are you feeling about it? Top two.
Excited about the game, about the fact that, you've got these. It's a little bit like when Jurgen Klopp was chasing Pep Guardiola for a number of years, and eventually they got there in the end. It feels a bit like that. That Arsenal are on the sort of, if you like, on the shoulder of Manchester City. And what Pep Guardiola and Manchester City have achieved in this last few years is absolutely incredible. But they know they've got a serious contender. And it's about how this serious contender goes there next week. And I'm sure there'll be an element of Mikel Arteta that will think at 65 minutes, if they're 0-0, we've got to go and score. And the team as well. And that's that development in your mindset. Sometimes it's a real sort of step-by-step journey to get to where you want to be in football. We had it from 94 through to 99 in the Champions League, where you're almost getting lessons every year and you're sort of developing that little bit of experience and knowledge about how to get over the line, and eventually you get there. If you're going to get there. And that's a feeling I have with Arsenal. So next Sunday is another measure and a barometer of where they're at in this sort of journey towards winning a Premier League title. I do feel that Mikel Arteta, he signed a new 3-year deal. He signed it with one clear target, and that's to win a Premier League title. And that'll be the expectation, not just of him, but of the players in the changing room, the fans over there in that corner and in the stadium at the Emirates, but also in the boardroom at Arsenal. We have to win a league now in this next 3 years. This has to result in something. This progression that we're on has to, at the end up with a league medal round our necks. And next Sunday is another time for us to be able to look at Arsenal and assess where they're at.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks. Thank you.
What then about this bullish response and the bullish reaction from Ange Postecoglou to those questions that Emma was asking today about the fact that he says, and he reiterated it there, we win in the second season? Do you see that happening?
Not at the moment. I mean, the first 3 games of the season, I would have to say they played really well. And like I said, it was just that cutting edge. They're not far away. I think he's the right man for Tottenham at this moment in time, and I think they'll get it right. But they have to put some. Today there was a lack of quality. In the previous games, there've been a lack of personnel in the areas where the balls have gone into. So Solanke played today. I think he's going to take 2 or 3 games to get up to speed, to speed to where he needs to be. But no, I think Ange, from what I've seen so far, he's the right man for Tottenham.
What do you think, Merce? As a neutral, do you think Spurs have got a chance? He says he can win a trophy this year.
I like Ange. I like him. But I've got more chance of winning strictly.
I've seen some of your dance moves.
Exactly.
That's not great news for Spurs.
That's what chance they got. No, I don't see it at the moment. I don't. There's not a lot wrong. There's a lot. You look at them and you look where Newcastle are. Tottenham have probably been playing better over the first 3 games, and Newcastle got more points than them. So it's fine lines.
Improvement would be top 4.
If they get top 4. Brilliant. Honestly, that would be amazing. 100% it'll be amazing. But they'll need Solanke to get 20-odd goals. You can only get 20-odd goals if the crossing improves. If the crossing don't improve, you could put Haaland up there and he wouldn't get 20.
Jamie, do you see the signs of something developing, something kicking on in this second season?
This time last year, Spurs were fantastic to watch. We was all waxing lyrical about the manager, the free-flowing football. Right now, it's not free-flowing, and all of a sudden, if you play well and you don't start winning, then you start to get days like today where the quality drops. So they need to pick up some results quickly. It's a fact at this club. If you're not winning games, you don't get long, and he needs to start winning some games.
But surely you would say this is a much better watch under Ange Postecoglou than in recent seasons.
Yeah. I mean, that isn't
Yeah, but
harsh.
it's not
That
be-
isn't harsh.
it's
But that's
better
not what they
it's
want.
not- I don't think it's better than last season's watch. That's
No,
quite-
but for the manager, he means, don't you?
Yeah.
In terms of the manager.
The manager was here last season.
Yeah, but I
Before
think this season's better. Last season was better than this season
I think
so
great
far.
lot. Early
yeah,
in the
I thought
season.
they were mind blowing last season. I like watching them as a neutral. I do like watching Tottenham. I like Ange. I think they play entertaining football. But some of the big players have got to step up. You know, James Maddison wasn't great today. You know, he's got to step up. He's got to be better. He's playing in a position where you've got to make things happen. I don't personally think he'd done that today, and who he was playing against, it's got to be better. And I'm not saying digging him out because I'm a big fan of his, but I've played in that position and I know what you've got to do, and he needs to do better.